Divergence is probably one of the best tools that we have to identify gaps. And there's many different types of divergence. And this particular example has one of my favorites. And in this example, we have my vertical green line is on the day before a gap down. And this gap down, we're in an inexpensive stock. On the closing on this day was $2.73. And so it is one of those that's under $10. Some people trade in this area, some people don't, but you can make reasonably good deals under $10 if you're not one that trades in there now. Oftentimes the volume is poor, but you can still grab a few shares and take advantage of the situation. In this particular case, the closing on the vertical green line day was $2.73, and it opened at $1.95. And so that difference is like 78, 79 cents, whatever it is. And as a result of that, that's about, I think it was 26 or 27% when I punched it out on the calculator. So in other words, you invested $1,000 in this stock and you can gain $270 for each $1,000 that you put into the position. That's a pretty powerful move. And so I want to show you the reasons behind that move. The key thing right here is in the trend chart, and these are probably my favorite pair that are divergent. Trend red is in a high M pattern, and it's a high M lower pattern in trend red, and it's a high M higher pattern in PowRed. And as you know, these are two very important indicators. With swing Zion, these are the big three. And trend red also is probably the most powerful indicator in the system because of all the information that it can give us. Its value, it comes into play time and time again. And so when you have trend red and PowRed in a divergent condition, you're going to get a reaction. And the thing about divergence is you can't tell, if you just look at divergence, you can't identify which direction the price is going. You can look at the patterns and tell. For example, a high M lower and a high M higher is obviously a next day down move. But other than that, you're not divergence doesn't tell us direction. It tells us about volatility, because when you have one indicator line going up and another indicator line going down, or in this case here, when you have one peak higher than the other peak with the same price value, obviously, it causes price directional movement and obviously a change. Along with that, there are several other factors. Swing Zion and swing pink are in a high M lower pattern, both of them. In the zip red chart, you have red as a high M higher, and all of the other lines are a high M lower, except for zip yellow. Zip yellow is equal. And if you haven't caught it, when you have an indicator that's equal, the basic rule is that you can use it to go in either direction to your benefit for that particular trade. So you could treat it as a higher high M or a lower high M. For our situation, it really makes no difference in this particular example. The other factor we have here is, I'm going to move this vertical line over 1 day. On the day before the vertical line, right now, price red was highest. Today, on this vertical green line, price red is lowest. So what you have what we refer to as price line divergence. Normally red would be highest up here and it would go down and it would remain highest. But in this particular case, it's gone down and went under green, so it crossed under, and that move we refer to as being divergence. It's called crossover divergence, and it's very powerful. This, when red goes down, when red crosses under green, it can be an example of an uptrend or a next day up or a next day down. And obviously it can gap as well. So on this particular day you had divergence, and just so that you identify with what we've got. If you look at this candle right here on the day before the gap down, this green candle opened at 251 and it closed at 273. So that only went up 22 cents. But that 22 cents is, depending on how you calculate it, 9 or 10% in value. So if you spotted this example right here, that divergence tells you that you're going to have some kind of strong move the next day. And by looking at the obvious thing on this green vertical line right here is you have a red spike. Zip red is at 27, zip yellow is at 43. The standard by the book rule for a red spike is red down and under 50 and yellow down and above 50. But again, if you've heard me on other videos, you know that we can take zip yellow down to around 30. I mean, I've seen it lower than that and still it bounces back. And of course the zip red was under that. But it's one of those situations where red spikes and red peaks have tremendous flexibility in the range with which they work. Obviously, like a pink-green top has zip green at 100. It's no longer a pink-green top if zip green is not at 100. So the flexibility in red peaks and red spikes is simply tremendous. But those are mentally, that's kind of the general rule I use right now. If zip yellow goes under 50, I'm not necessarily going to treat it as a next day up or a reversal pattern. I mean, I've seen them down at 15 and only 2 points apart and still reverse. But that may not always be the case. So in any case, you've got a 9 or 10% go up the next day simply by seeing the price red on the peak, and it crosses under and becomes lower on the go down. So I mean, that's a tremendous move on whatever you can buy in the way of shares. You make 9 or 10% on in 1 day. Excuse me, in 1 day. That's tremendous. So all of this being said, let me move this vertical line back to where I had it before. You've got just a significant, I mean, you practically, I guess in every chart except the swing Zion. Now let's check out one thing. I haven't done that because both the swing Zion and the swing pink were high M lower patterns. Let's see, and look at that. Yellow is a high M higher pattern. So we have divergence in every, looks like in every single chart, or in a comparison between the charts. power or trend chart and power chart, we did the divergences between the two lines, but even the swing chart has divergence between the yellow in a higher high M and Zion and pink in a lower high M peak pattern. So remember, the greater the amount of supporting evidence, in this case here we're dealing primarily with divergence, and it doesn't take a lot of divergence to give us a gap. But we've got a lot of divergence in this example, and of course we have a big gap down. So great example for a divergent condition. Again, we have the scans built and ready to be used. Trend red in a high M lower pattern and power red in a high M higher pattern. Some people might look at it as a BOC lower and a BOC higher, but however you look at it, I'd have to look back and see how we've got that labeled. But in any case, it's the same result. You can pick those you can just wait for them. The scanner will spit them out every day. So we are amazed at how this system functions. We have personally, we've been amazed at how the pieces have fallen together. When you talk about the sensitive indicators and you talk about the formula power, and when you combine it with the procedures power, you put all this together and you just have a system that is beyond what our expectations were. So we're thankful that you're watching. We encourage you to look at more. We really think we have the best trading system on the planet.